Okay, let's add some color to our texture. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this whole block of compositing and I'm putting it into a group, calling this lighting. And I'm going to put this one in another group, calling this color map, so that the document is a bit more organized. Now another group, calling this color information. And let's pick a color. So what we're going to use is that, of course, it's rocks, but I would like to give it a bit of a brownish color, maybe something like this. Let's see how this looks. Okay, so I'm going to call this base color, and I'm going to set this one to hard light, and I'm going to fill the layer with the color. I think this can be maybe a bit darker and more saturated. Maybe something like this. And from here we're going to work our way up with the color information. Okay, to this layer I'm going to add a hue saturation layer, but I am not going to tweak this yet. Maybe remove some of the saturation so that I can go to this one later and change the values if I need to. Let's keep it like this for now. Okay, next I'm going to place some colored lighting information, and I'm going to do this by checking our normal map, and I'm going into select, and I'm going to select a color range, and I'm going to pick something that I find on every top of the bricks, and that is a greenish color. And I want to make sure that all the top parts are selected like this. And then I'm going to make a new layer, call this top lighting, and I'm going to give this a very subtle bluish color like this. And then I'm going to put this to overlay, and this is already looking pretty good. Maybe not as strong, but now you can see that we have some light information from our normal map on top of the rocks. The same I'm going to do for the shadow parts. So I'm going into my normal map again, I'm going to hit select, look for a color range, and for the bottom part I'm going to pick something that's more purple. Let's make this a bit more clear. Let's pick a good part. Maybe I want some more shadow, so that also these areas are covered that are kind of tilting down on the sides of our stone. So let's see how this looks. I'm going to hide my normal map, creating a new layer, call this bottom shadow. And for this I'm going to pick a dark red color, maybe something like this. Let's see how this looks. Created already a layer for the bottom shadow. Going to fill this layer, and then I'm going to put this one to color dodge. And as you can see, you get some nice indication of some shadow and lighting that happens at the bottom of the stone. Let's see if we can make this a bit better. I'm going to add a hue saturation layer to this, create another clipping mask, and just see what we can do with the color. Maybe not make it that red, and a bit darker. something like this could work. Let's use this for now. Now, we already added some color information, especially lights and shadows. To give it a bit more of a random look, I'm just going to get some of the lighter colors, like this gray. And for my background color, I'm going to get something more red. And I'm going to create a cloud texture. And the good thing about cloud textures is that they always tile automatically. So whatever I type in here, you see there's no seam, which is really nice. And I'm going to put this cloud texture on top of our base color. And I'm going to put this to overlay, but not very strong, so maybe something like this. Okay. For the next step, I'm going to create a layer, and I'm going to paint in the edges of the stone. So I'm going to put this on overlay, and I'm picking a white brush and I start painting in the edge information. Take a hard brush, make sure that the pressure sensitivity is on, and I start painting. And because I already have decided where my lighting is going to be, I'm also going to paint on the edges. So I'm going to paint the top parts, and I'm going to paint below the broken pieces, like any cracks. Just like this for now. So I'm finding these parts and the top part of the model, and I'm painting the edge detail in. Okay, I'm going to do this now for the whole model. Okay, when you have done this, we're going to reduce the overlay a bit, so the effect isn't that strong, but you still get some nicer outlines on your texture, which makes it look a bit more painterly. And then we're going to do the same for the cracks. And of course, for that one, we're going to use a darker color, and I'm going to go for a gray at 50% brightness. And I'm going to set this layer to multiply. And I'm going to do the same thing, except now I'm going to paint in the cracks and all the little dents we've made. And we're going to do the same for the whole texture again. Okay, when we have done this, there are still a few more things that I would like to do. The first thing is that I do not like the pure black lines between the bricks, because this gives us a bit too much of a contrast for just the texture that is in the background. That would just draw too much attention to the texture. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a texture that has a lot of these black cracks already in there. So I'm going to take the baked ambient occlusion map from our XNormal. I'm going to duplicate this. Just putting it up here for now so we can see it. Going back to normal mode and increase the opacity. And then again, I'm going into my color range selection, and I'm going to pick the darkest spots. So something like this, so that I only select the creases in between the bricks. I hit OK. Going to hide this, and I'll make a new layer which I'm going to call creases. Add the blend mode to hard light, and I'm going to pick a brighter color. Let's just use some light gray for now, and I'm going to paste this. Then let's give this more of like a sand color, so I'm going to adjust the saturation. I'm going into colorize, and I'm going to pick something like this and hit apply. And then I'm going in there manually to fix some of the noisy spots in here. So I'm going back to my normal mode, and I'm going to pick the color, and I'm going to paint over the creases with my normal brush to just make the transition a bit better, and maybe go into some of these. And I just keep painting until I'm happy with all the spots covered. Like this, for example, I want to cover this up. And again, I'm going to pause the video here and do this for the whole texture. Okay, when I have all the areas covered, I'm going to set my layer back to hard light, and I'm going to lower the opacity so that the effect is not that strong. Let's put this to 60, and I'm going to add a hue saturation layer on top of it, and I think I'm going to reduce the saturation on this one to something like this. Okay, just going to erase some parts that on second look I do not like. These go in a bit too much for my taste. Okay, I've only adjusted some of the edges a bit, made them fade out a bit better, but this is already quite very final result of the texture we want for our wall. And of course you can now go in to our layers and change some of the settings. So if we want more color variation, we change the height to 100%, for example, so you have some darker stones and some lighter stones. You can play with all of those layers. If you want more ambient occlusion, you can change all of this if you would like to. So you can go back and change the color. For example, here for the base color, if you want different colored stones, that's all possible. Let's take something darker. Something like this if you want to have more grayish stones, which I actually like when I see this. So I might make this a bit darker. And keep this. And you can change all kinds of stuff on the fly. It's very non-destructive the way we worked. So all of our layers are here, and we have adjusted the layer adjustment layers. So if you have anything, you can just go back in there and switch them around. If you want more shadow or different colored shadow or darker shadow, it's all possible with this setup. Okay, but I'm going back to what we had at the start, and I'm just going to make the base color a bit brighter. It's a bit more gray. When you're done with your texture, I'm going to take the whole color map, I'm going to duplicate it, and then I'm going to merge the layer by hitting Ctrl E. And I'll do a few more final things. The first is I'm going to change the image size to 512 by 512. And I'm going to take the bicubic sharper setting, which already sharpens your texture once. And as a last step, I'm going into sharpen, unsharp mask, and then I'm going to sharpen this one more time. With a setting that I like. Let's take this one. And there we have our final texture, which we can later apply into our Maya scene.